Everybody, happy Thursday, happy Pride, and welcome to the DataPride Tableau User Group's Pride Month event using Tableau for Good. And we are so very excited to be hosting this event with Sarah and Heidi from GLAAD, along with Tableau Visionaries Kevin and Ken Flerlage. This event means so much as we are so honored to have GLAAD here, an amazing LGBTQ plus focused nonprofit on media, and it's just amazing to be here. Now, as we go through, we are simulcast live on YouTube. YouTube live chat is not available, as we'll be taking chats from Bevy, and we'll be working to get any of the work between simulcasting and other areas and here all worked out. But right now, we just hope for those who are watching that you enjoy as well. For those of you who are joining throughout today's broadcast in Bevy, please let us know where you're calling in from. We're so excited to see people from everywhere on today. So as we get started, our agenda, we're going to do some welcome, some housekeeping. We're going to talk about Pride Month, and then we'll get right into our conversation with GLAAD. We'll get into a closing, and at the end, for those who stay around, we do have some swag to give away, so definitely stay tuned for that. So for us, just so for everyone knows, the DataPride Tableau User Group is a virtual community space to highlight, elevate, and bring together the LGBTQ plus community in data and our allies. And we have been doing this. This is now our fourth year since bringing everyone together and really working forward to bring more focus on the LGBTQ community and data and onto our data that impacts us and the overall world. We are so very excited as well that with the new Tableau community Slack, are on the Tableau community Slack. We have a channel focused on the DataPride community. If you check out the links below, the QR code, you'll be able to join the Tableau community in Slack from a broad perspective, the overall data fam, and then join the community DataPride channel. With that, we are your DataPride leads. My name is Lawrence Durbin. My pronouns are he, him, his. We've got Kyle Massey on the line and Sarah Carr, and I'll let them say hi themselves.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle Massey. Pronouns are also he, him, his. I'm very excited to have Heidi and Sarah from GLAAD on with us. This has been a long time in the making, coordinating. We couldn't be happier that it worked out. I can't wait to see the presentation. And also, thanks, Ken and Kevin, for dedicating your time to spend with us during Pride Month as well. I'm super excited for this event.
My name's Sarah Carr, pronouns she, her, and grateful for GLAAD and Moxy Analytics to be joining us today and sharing this project with us. So, thank you.
Thank you. And we are so excited that we'll be having some announcements, some amazing announcements around DataPride and our leadership in our coming events. So stay tuned for that. So now, happy Pride Month. And Pride Month is here. I'm showing Colors of Pride, a dedication around the different flags in the LGBTQ community and a timeline. This was done by Lisa Trescott on Tableau Public, so highlighting that and just showing all the different parts of the LGBTQ plus community. And so we are so excited to be bringing here this event overall and talking about the LGBTQ plus community. And we do want to acknowledge that Pride started as a riot and that Pride on Saturday marks the 56th anniversary of the Stonewall riots and the Stonewall in New York City. Pride Month has been a yearly reminder of these riots. We see our parades across the globe in June, but it really is centered in those riots and how we've been able to move forward with the rights of the LGBTQ community in those events that were started by queer and trans people of color. And really want to hone in on that fact that while Pride is a joyous time as well, it is ingrained in our fights for our rights. And today actually marks also the 10th anniversary of the Supreme Court case Obergefell versus Hodges, where the ruling provided the fundamental right to marriage for same-sex couples, which it's only been 10 years that we've had the right across the US to be able to marry, and we're still fighting for that right across the globe. But we take in that we are still fighting and moving forward and just ingraining in that for us. With that being said, I'm very super excited. I'm going to hand off everything to GLAAD and Moxy. And today we have Sarah Moore and Heidi Spillum from GLAAD, and we've got Kevin Flerlage and Ken Flerlage as well talking about this. So I'm going to stop my sharing and I want to welcome you, Sarah, Heidi, Kevin, Ken, please take away.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. And hello, everybody. It's so great to see you all on this call. So excited to be around some fellow data nerds. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So just really excited that we get to highlight this today for you guys. As Lawrence mentioned, my name is Sarah Moore. Pronouns are she, her. I'm GLAAD's Senior Manager of News and Research. So I work underneath our communications team to help lead our response to breaking news and responding to emerging crises. And I also run our alert desk, which we'll be covering here today. I'll let Heidi and Kevin introduce themselves, and then we will get into some of our slides.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi Spillum. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the web producer for the GLAAD do everything relating to the GLAAD website. And I help with special projects like this one we had for the alert desk.
I'm Kevin Flerlage, Moxy Analytics. Yeah, we were excited to be involved in this, but you don't want me talking too much. We want them talking. So, Ken, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, I'm Kevin's brother. We're the Flerlage twins. So, yeah, we're excited to have GLAAD reach out to us and to help with this project. And yeah, that's all. We'll hand it back to Sarah and Heidi.
Thanks, y'all. Okay, let me get my screen shared here. Okay, so today we're going to be chatting a little bit about GLAAD's work through the alert desk, which we were happily able to put up through our data visualizations of Tableau. But just to get us started here, I am first going to just talk a little bit about what GLAAD is, what kind of work we do in case you aren't familiar with it. So GLAAD is the world's largest LGBTQ media advocacy group. And our work is really centered on ensuring this and accuracy in media reporting on LGBTQ issues, and overall just making sure that we're able to uplift LGBTQ voices wherever possible. As you can imagine, this work spans nearly every aspect of life. Our team is really active in everything from entertainment to politics, from business to human rights, from issues in sports to fairness in journalism. Our whole goal is really to meet people where they are and to work with companies to improve their LGBTQ inclusion internally, helping to lift up really powerful queer stories like you might see here on the screen from Drag the Musical, which won one of our GLAAD Media Awards this year. And overall working to kind of change the culture and change the narrative. So you might see on the screen our campaign around the New York Times' trans coverage, as well as some of our work with the NFL and with World Pride's Human Rights Conference, really trying to make sure that we are challenging these narratives to make sure that everybody can live and love freely. And so as part of this overall mission, I helped GLAAD launch the Alert Desk. So the Alert Desk is GLAAD's Anti-LGBTQ Extremism Reporting Tracker. And this is our central hub for all things anti-LGBTQ hate and extremism in the US. We release a report right before Pride Month that track incidents of anti-LGBTQ hate over the past year. This year, between May of 2024 and 2025, our team documented an astounding 932 anti-LGBTQ incidents in the US. That's the equivalent of 2.5 incidents happening every single day. And since I know that you guys are all fans of data here, people after my own heart, I'm sure you might be wondering too, like how we're actually tracking these metrics and what actually makes up an incident. So when we talk about anti-LGBTQ incidents, we're talking about nearly every expression of anti-LGBTQ hate, from things that would be considered kind of like on the criminal and violent side, all the way down to things that are traditionally not prosecuted as hate crimes or are in some cases constitutionally protected, things like protest or hate speech, all the way up to violent crimes like assaults, bomb threats, and in some cases vandalism too. As long as an incident is being motivated by anti-LGBTQ hate explicitly and includes an act of harassment, vandalism, or assault, then that's something that's going to be included in our data set. We are collecting these incidents from a whole bunch of different types of sources, everything from social media to news media to reporting on extremist forums directly when they sometimes are talking about acts that they've themselves perpetrated. Down to information being shared from partner organizations, and finally from self-reports coming in through the Alert Desk's incident reporting form on our landing page. We really consider these to be an extremely important metric of what the LGBTQ experience looks like in the US, because we're telling the stories that oftentimes are going unreported in their local media and going uninvestigated by their local police departments. Right now, with the changes that are being made by the Trump administration at the federal level, we're seeing a lot of federal agencies really pull back on tracking metrics specifically related to anti-trans hate and broader efforts to combat violent extremism in the US. And so because of this, we can't rely on these federal sources, things like the FBI's hate crime stats or other statistics coming out of the DOJ, in order to be able to track what anti-LGBTQ hate looks like in the US. And even in the cases where that is being reported to these federal agencies, we also see that things like state hate crime laws or federal or state and local regulations around anti-LGBTQ hate-based incidents are wildly inconsistent. A lot of states actually don't include protections on the basis of gender identity, and even more don't include protections on the basis of sexual orientation. So we really know that in order to be able to encapsulate this data, that we are reliant on using our own community to kind of crowdsource these incidents and make sure that we have a central gathering list that's not dependent on federal backing. And with all of these kind of really complex data points that are coming in, we are able to tell some really, really powerful stories. So we're able to analyze trends in anti-LGBTQ hate and extremism in the US by tracking year-over-year changes, not only in terms of these broader national level numbers, but also in terms of specific targets that are being chosen and by the tactics that extremists and bigots are using to target the LGBTQ community. So for example, on this graph here, you can see that in our findings from this previous year, attacks on drag actually dropped significantly, one of the more positive findings from this year's report. And there are a lot of changes that go into a statistic like this, but one of the things that we have noticed is that, while attacks on drag were a big part of the anti-LGBTQ mobilization happening in 2022, 2023, that focus has really shifted now into a conversation around trans rights, into a conversation happening at city councils and at school boards nationwide, with less focus on drag, as a lot of laws are both prohibiting certain types of drag performances in different states, as well as drag performers themselves getting smarter about putting on these performances to be able to kind of mitigate a lot of the harassment and protests that we had seen in years past. So lots of things going on. And as you can tell, this is a really complicated and large story to tell. And so one of the things that we really wanted to make sure that we could do was, not just leave it up to me to interpret this data, not just leave it up to GLAAD to provide these bespoke data sets to journalists, but really providing a place where all users could come in and ask their own questions of this data. What does this look like in my state? What does attacks on educators look like in my city? What does this look like in my congressional district? These were all things we wanted people to be able to parse themselves. And so we were trying to come up with a solution to how we could display this data visually that would allow users to interact with it in this way. And so this is really the kind of background that I came to Heidi with, and Heidi then brought in our amazing other partners. And so I'm going to turn it over to her to talk kind of through what the initial challenges we had in this data looked like, and how we were able to get to the point that we're at now. Heidi?
Yes, thank you, Sarah. For this project, we partnered with our long-term team, Logical Alternative, Melissa and Evelyn Dickinson, to help us come up with a solution using Tableau Public to display an on-page interactive US map for all the incidents that happened in the country, as Sarah mentioned before. We also wanted to see incidents on a city or regional level, have the data downloaded for specific data sets so the users visiting the landing page dashboard could utilize the data for their own direct needs. A major concern is data for everybody, and data security and updating and having updating control. Those were the highest priorities for us. Initially, we were using a CSV file exported from Airtable, and we found that some incidences fell into multiple types and targets. So those needed to be separated, which led to a lot of manual work and formatting. And it was just so time consuming. We also ran into display issues with automatic geocoding for city names matching the correct states, like Portland, Maine versus Portland, Oregon, those types of things we ran into issues with. Other issues were display dot sizes on the map and interactivity with all the data types and target destinations. We eventually, Evelyn, later in the process, had to create a custom app that each incident is entered in with city or zip that had a geolocation selector that auto-populated the latitude and longitude data for the accuracy of display on the map. This allowed us to connect to the secure data set easily when we wanted to update it, and then we didn't have to worry about exporting, formatting anything every time. It's also easy to update and change incident items already existing in the app if we needed to fine tune. Essentially, we ultimately we ended up running out of time for the project launch, and Melissa reached out to Moxy Analytics, Kevin and team for the expertise and help to move us forward with this project. Kevin, I'll pass it to you now.
Awesome. So share screen. Assume you can see it okay.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, they brought us in. We talked about the data. We saw a lot of the issues that you were just talking about. That the geocoding was incorrect. We saw a lot of things. What kind of tipped me off initially was there was a lot of stuff in Alaska and it just didn't make sense, and there's some issues with geocoding. The custom app thing solved all those problems. We got nice, clean data. Every data visualization practitioner's dream. So it really made that process very easy. So the starting point, and I'm just going to show some photographs, is starting point kind of looked like this. We got a initial view from, I'm not sure exactly who built it, but got this initial view of, all right, what does it look like, right? So they were plotting incidents on a map, and anybody that's built maps in Tableau is probably going, oh, this is such a pain because we have this, what I call the Alaska problem, right? Where everything in the lower 48 is really minimized by Alaska. And we show all this stuff that's really unnecessary. So ultimately, the goal was, let's get this into a much nicer view, something like we might do with an alternative projection where we bring Alaska and Hawaii down and they kind of are in one view. The problem with that, plotting points, this is great with counties. You got a county projection map, you got a state projection map, but plotting actual points, this doesn't work very well on these, and it's a little bit more complicated. So we had some challenges there. Ultimately, what we picked what we landed on was doing what we've all done 100 times probably, is having to use 3 sheets, right? So we have a sheet for Alaska, a sheet for Hawaii, and a sheet for the lower US. So where do we kind of start with this? I kind of just wanted to give the ability to sort of just look at state as a whole, right? So if we want to just look at state as a whole, we're going to talk some Tableau and some data viz best practices. We could have used a choropleth map, right, or a filled map, and we just color the states. But the problem we have with that ultimately is the area. It tends to be more important than anything else. So when I first pulled this up, you probably noticed Montana first. You probably noticed Rhode Island next. Rhode Island and Montana have the same population generally, yet the visual weight of Montana is much larger than Rhode Island. In this case, I didn't want to go with a choropleth map. I just went with a very simple hex map. Probably a question a bunch of analytics folks will say is, hey, did you normalize this data and look at incidents per 100,000 people or something like that? And the answer is no. We just wanted to keep it simple and just wanted to show by state how many incidents there were. So how this starts off is we have a hex map, and it's just color coded based on number of incidents. You can click on that hex map. I'm in Kentucky. I'm going to click on Kentucky. It's going to filter this table here, and it's also going to filter our map to see where those actual crimes are. So the larger bubbles are, larger number of incidents in that location. So in Louisville, there's 14. In Kentucky, we call Louisville, because that's just weird. And then you can see kind of scatterings of 1s and 2s everywhere else. In the table, they talked about wanting to allow people to sort of download that data, get information about their own state, use that data for their own analyses. The data is always being filtered by selections in this or in this. So if we want to just get down to Louisville, I could select Louisville. Then I could just click the button to download that. And we do have some filtering options. You can filter by different incident types. You can filter by target types, and as well as look at a date range. If we want to clear this, we just come back up to the top, show all, and we get back to the start, and we can start drilling down again. Look at California, 466 incidents, 466 in the table, and then we can zoom in and kind of explore California a little bit further. So San Francisco, a large bubble there. We got 34 there. So this is, even though it looks simple, there's a ton of different little challenges in here. The map is always challenging. You see, I've got that zoomed in. So map is always challenging when we're trying to plot points, because we have to have these sort of 3 different sheets. Frustrating. Wish we could do something a little bit different. But in the end, I think it worked out pretty well that we have this ability to say, okay, by state, how many incidents there are, and let's start drilling down and getting that raw data in map view as well. Another thing that we wanted to look at was the number by different types of incidents, right? So you can see here, this is the initial take. I think this was done in another tool that we won't name. It wasn't done in Tableau. And we can see a stack bar chart that shows, the arson, assault, bomb threats, etc. If you've ever seen any presentation I've done, probably in the last 3 or 4 years, you know my disdain for stacked bar charts. It's difficult to make comparisons. We can make comparisons for the total. You can certainly see the spike in June 2023, but it's hard to compare, say, for example, salts, because they have a sort of a different starting point, right? They don't start at the same point. It's hard to compare this value to this value, right? So, and obviously labeling becomes problematic. So we just sort of simplified this, and we scroll down a little bit further. We've got this breakdown of incidents by month, and we have now 2 different breakdowns. We have incidents by type, and then we have incidents by target type. So color, probably not necessary in this, but we added it anyways. So we can see the trends over time based on those individuals. And you're probably saying, hey, what about the total? We're now missing out on seeing this spike in June. Well, we have options here where we can actually, instead of showing breakdowns, we can just show the total. And we now see the spikes over time, right? So generally, that's about it. I mean, there was certainly a number of challenges, right? I mean, especially with the mapping and the sort of interactivity. But I think we were able to solve that. And, they took it, we put it up on Tableau Public, they took it and ran with it, embedded it on their website. And I think generally looks pretty good. Got the matching colors with the branding with GLAAD. And generally speaking, we played a little part of this, they did all that work on the front end to get the data in a really great shape. And we just came and visualized it. So we were very, very, very honored to be a part of it and supporting such a great organization as GLAAD. Yeah, we just played a little part of it. They're doing really, really great work. So thank you for letting us be a part of it.
Yeah, I'll jump back in and share my screen real quick, and then you guys can see the live page and how wonderful it works, and the usability that Kevin created. All right, so here's the landing page, and we'll share the link. I think somebody already shared the link in the chat so you can play around with it on your own. But since the map is kind of complicated, we ended up doing a little kind of a key for people that need more information about how to use it. But yes, this works wonderful for everybody. They can do screenshots to share in their articles. We can use them in our reports. And then the information is so easily to download in a Excel spreadsheet. So essentially, I'll keep this short because Kevin already demoed how this works, but it's a great tool to utilize and just get information real quick, see trends, and download it for whatever the user needs at that specific time. Sarah, I'm going to pass this back to you.
Sorry if I stole a little of your thunder there, Heidi.
Totally, no worries.
We're all just so excited to show the map. Thank you guys so much for that. And as you guys, I'm sure, can tell, this has really been a labor of love and is so exciting. I think a lot of users will be able to find some incredible utilities for a tool like this. I just wanted to end here by talking a little bit about what we've already seen this data being used for. Like I mentioned, the real goal of this was to be able to let users play with the data themselves, handcraft their own data sets, use it to contextualize stories that they themselves are experiencing. And we've seen a really great response to that so far. Just for example, we will get a ton of media coverage that is actually using the Alert Desk stats to contextualize incidents happening in their area. I'm just going to show you guys just one of these. This is literally from 2 days ago. So I was actually researching more incidents for our upcoming new release of data for the map, and saw this one about a hate crime charge that was happening in Atlanta from local news outlet 11 Alive, which, we didn't even know that they were covering this story. And as I'm reading through the article, it's talking about what happened, showing some of the pride flags that were torn up, come down all the way to here and see this part highlighted. We can actually see that these reporters went on the Alert Desk Tableau site, specifically took a look at Georgia, at Atlanta in particular, to pull localized stats to be able to contextualize this from 2 days ago with everything that's been happening in their area over the last year. So this is just one example of the way that we're really seeing news outlets respond well to these customized data sets. And we've also had a lot of interest outside of news media too. We've had actually outreach from federal lawmakers too, who are working on hate crime legislation. I'm actually going and speaking with the senator's office right after this call, who had seen our presentation at the Pride event for their human rights conference, and they wanted to speak about how we might be able to use this work for their research for the Judiciary Committee. We can also create kind of customized data sets for the state and local governments too. One group that has been really active with us has been the LA County's Hate Crimes Commission. They have been an amazing partner in terms of tracking what anti-LGBTQ hate and bias motivated incidents look like in their area, and have been able to kind of share some data back and forth, which is made possible by the fact that down to that LA County and LA City level geography on maps like this. And we can also use some of this data to help with social media platforms. We can use it to talk with law enforcement. We can use it to, speak about these connections between online rhetoric and offline harm. And my favorite part of all of this work has also been specifically being able to work with the victims of these really unfortunate and horrific acts, use this data to help better tell their stories. If we have any crime podcast fans on, one of my favorite things that I've been able to do in this line of work was work with CBS's 48 Hours team on the story of Blaze Bernstein, who was an amazing, bright college student from California who was tragically murdered for being Jewish by a former classmate turned neo-Nazi in 2018. Through the Alert Desk, we've been able to help not only amplify Blaze's story, to not only help amplify the amazing work of his parents, who have now created this amazing nonprofit, Blaze It Forward, to carry on his legacy, but we can also contextualize it and say, Blaze will not just be a number. He is going to be, we want to make sure that there's actual change that's happening and coming out of his legacy. And so when seeing all of these other incidents that are happening, we can use this in addition to the powerful elements of Blaze's story to really drive change and make a meaningful impact. And we're just really grateful for you guys at Tableau helping support us in this work and for giving us the opportunity to share a little bit about this. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Q&A if there's any questions on the work we've been doing here.
Yes, so for those, Q&A has opened, and please post questions in the Q&A in the chat. I do have to say that this is it's heavy. It's a lot of heavy work, especially as what you were, just talking about those incidents, and it's heavy, but seeing it being used and able to see about those incidents and local communities able to target and really understand what's going on is huge. And I want to thank all of you. The amazing presentation, thank you. And it hits and a lot. And actually one of the events you were talking about that you had pulled up reminded me of something that just came out in the news for my local news, where the headline was an individual on a unicycle stealing and ripping down pride flags. And so kind of had me thinking about that and those type of incidents. And so we've got, with looking at the questions here, We had a question on reporting incidents and what does that reporting look like. So you do have that right on the alert desk tracker. There is a report the incident button. You put the link as well, thank you, in the chat. And now another question in the Q&A. The only way to download the data is through the report or the Tableau dashboard, correct? Is the question.
Yes, so you can download the data publicly on the Tableau dashboard. If you're looking for a more bespoke data set that has maybe some of the background details that we keep, like incident description, you can send those requests to press@glaad.org. We do send the background sheet out to verified journalists who are covering these issues too.
Fantastic. And so do you have, with that and those type of details or just the data in general, do you have advice for nonprofits wanting to use data more or advice for consultants working on these type of projects, especially with these nonprofits? So I think this is both for, GLAAD and for Moxy here on that, on both sides.
Yeah, I can start out. I think one of the things that I personally love is, turning these really complex qualitative stories into kind of quantitative numbers that we can use for analysis. And that's one of the things that I think nonprofits can be a little hesitant for. They might not necessarily understand how they can turn these impactful stories or anecdotes into, something to use to drive meaningful change. And so I hope that this provides, one type of model for how that might be done for the nonprofits. The other question here on advice for consultants working on these projects. I think when we are turning these complex stories into kind of more simplified numbers, one of the things we always want to make sure that we're doing is centering the voices of the people whose stories that we're telling and making sure that we're doing justice to those stories. I don't want to, in this work, maybe share somebody's PII, their personally identifiable information when I'm telling this story. I want to make sure that I'm doing due diligence on checking, the details of the reporting, making sure everything's accurate, making sure that the pronouns we're using are accurate. I always want to make sure we're centering the voices of the victims and telling the stories in the most accurate and respectful ways that we can. So for anyone, working on similar data, especially on LGBTQ issues, was reaching out to the people affected by the data is always, one of the good places to start. So I'll end there, but if anyone else has thoughts on that too, feel free.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing. You beat me to it, Sarah. I think so many of us, whether we're consultants or we just work for, at a company, we're used to dealing with business data, right? It's like finances or sales or whatever, right? But I think it's really important when we're working with this kind of data, whether it's for a nonprofit or something that we're doing on Tableau Public or whatever, that we remember that these are humans, right? They're not just data points. They're not sales. They're not, they're not dollars. And we have to really keep that in mind as we're building these things, that these are real stories about real people. And we have to be, very careful in making sure that we do that the right way, right?
It's interesting because literally 5 minutes before this call, I was having a conversation with a client just over Slack, and we got into this topic of strength finders. If anybody's done the Gallup strength finders, my top two happen to be responsibility and analytics or analytical or whatever. Probably not a surprise there, but my client, who's also does a similar type job that I do, said my top strength is empathy. And I said, and she said, so not as good as yours or whatever for what you do. And I'm like, empathy is probably, I wish that was my top one, because empathy is so important in the work that we do. Okay, maybe it doesn't matter as much. It does, but if we're talking about sales and budget data, right? But we still have to have empathy about how that end user is looking at that. And if that person is a category manager and they are only 50% of their target for the year, well, we got to think about how they feel. It's so much more important when we visualize this type of data and understand every one of those circles, those little red circles, is a human being, right? Or an actual incident that affected a human being or multiple human beings. And we have to, really take that into account, that this isn't 50% the budget. This is a real, attack on on a human being. So I think everybody here, Ken, Sarah, we're all saying the same thing, but it is so much more important to have empathy when we're working with this type of data.
No, that's huge. And I think that makes me think, data is an artifact of human experience, and no more so than this data. This data is in and of itself a human's experience, and that empathy is huge. And having empathy as well in all data, especially as someone who works in like people analytics, is huge, because that's about someone's career, that's about someone's life. But all the data has a human behind it, and understanding that whether it's a sales because someone bought something for some reason and all of that, there's that lived experience behind it. And in this case, it's that something has happened in a human's life, that in a person's life, that can be traumatic, was it's huge. And so that I appreciate that and thinking on that. And so we've kind of talked heavy on that. One of the questions we have in Q&A is, speaking of the heavy, while the info is very important, this is huge. From a GLAAD perspective, are you looking at, dashboards around queer success and queer joy? I know from our perspective as the DataPride Tableau User Group, and we've done challenges on LGBTQ data every Pride Month with different partners such as Back to His Basics for different challenges and doing different things with data. And it's always kind of hard for us to find, queer joy data. We can always find that heavy data. But are you looking at any of those queer success and joy?
Yeah, I love that you guys asked this question, because I would actually say that like 80 to 90% of GLAAD's content is around queer success and queer joy. I just so happen to be on the depressing team. I like to think of myself as bringing the rain when everyone else is bringing the sunshine to push the clouds away. So, you got to have a little bit of a balance of both. But I'll actually turn it over to Heidi, because Heidi works across all of our different projects, and we have so many other amazing projects that highlight things like LGBTQ representation on TV, studio responsibility in terms of amplifying LGBTQ stories, looking at the success across business platforms and overall community acceptance. So Heidi, you want to chat about that a little bit more too?
Sure. Yeah, we do I think 9 to 10 reports a year, and the alert desk is just one of those reports. And it was the kind of like the starting point to using Tableau like for everything. So right now, as with funding having problems across the board for nonprofit organizations, we're kind of picking and choosing our projects at this time. But moving forward, we plan to have this type of focus for all of our huge reports, and that way there's data over time. People can self-serve for all of this important information, because there are stories of joy in like the studio responsibility index or whatnot. Overall, the last couple of years, there has been a down spike in LGBTQ people in the movie space or television space, but there has been times where there's improvements and all these stuff and special films and celebrities and all this stuff that we can pull together and utilize this important tool. That's the plan of GLAAD moving forward. So it's just going to slowly roll out during these times, and we're just so happy to have the alert desk be such a success and to work with Kevin and Ken and the Moxy team to help us get this off the ground. We really appreciate it.
That's amazing. And it's so glad to hear that, looking at that expansing, and of course, using this as like the starting point for that. And I think, seeing that it's being used it's utilizing Tableau Public, I think is also like a huge barrier relief for some of that. You were talking about funding and like Tableau Public being what Tableau Public is that free space. And I think maybe this is from Kevin and Ken's perspective, the feasibility of using just Tableau Public, that includes Tableau Public Desktop, Tableau Public, to do the visualizations. What do you see as that feasibility for this work and in general, instead of just like having Tableau Desktop and then utilizing Tableau Public as the place to store it?
Yeah, I don't think there would have been any additional challenges. I mean, the free version of Tableau Desktop, we'll call it Tableau Public Desktop, is almost a full-featured product. Some limited on connectors and things like that, but and then of course that you have to publish to Tableau. Well, you can save locally now, but that you have to publish to Tableau Public. I think we could have done this whole specifically this project. We could have done this whole project with Tableau Public Desktop and Tableau Public, online, whatever you want to call it. So I don't see any challenges there. I mean, the main challenge with using Tableau Public over, a paid version of Tableau Desktop is where the where you have to view it, right? If you want, in this case, we want it to be, they want it to be public data, and shared publicly. Then there's absolutely no problem with it. I think it's hidden on their Tableau Public page, with the intention of just having people come to the website. But no major challenges with this particular data.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I think another big challenge is, of course, just being able to update the data on a more frequent basis.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah,
there are definitely some limitations, and even the capabilities that are there, like Google, is not always very consistent, right? Very reliable, unfortunately. So if this data were like constantly, if it was just constantly new stuff flowing in there and we wanted to keep refreshing that, then that would become a challenge. But I think that's less of an issue with this particular project, but could be an issue on other types of projects.
And then Sarah, Heidi, refresh my memory. I mean, this is something we talked about initially: do we want Tableau Public to be the home for it? And one of the main conversations we had was, the ability to refresh, data on a cadence. And I think you all are just updating this annually. Is that right?
I think it's quarterly.
Quarterly. Okay.
Yes. And then we had, Evelyn from Logical Alternative had to build that custom app to be able to, secure all of our data, to parse and to actually write script to have it help, lock down those longitude and latitude for the maps, because of like a general Google locator. That's where we ran into some specified issues of the wonky dots and all over the map. So right now, as Sarah gives me a list, I manually put them in, and then so the database generates new stuff. And then when we're able to, download the original thing, update it, reconnect the data. It's like, overall, I'm not fast at it now because I've only done it a couple times, but generally it's like 20 minutes to update the data. It's super quick and easy.
You're talking, barely over an hour in a year's time. And if I recall, you all had, this kind of desire to have to manually do it so that you could have a look at it before it actually got published, to your website and everything. So that automated refresh was kind of not something you necessarily wanted to do, because you wanted to be a manual process. You wanted to see it before it was released. So correct. I think it all, for this particular project worked out great.
And that's a great point, just in general for anything that is public facing data, right? You probably don't always want, unless you've got a really, really perfect workflow and you're catching all those issues and cleaning that data automatically, you probably do want a person to look at that and give it a thumbs up before you publish it anyway.
Definitely.
How many perfect workflows have you seen, Ken, that you would?
No. And I would, especially when you have, stuff that's being community reported, like it just requires a set of eyes just to make sure that it's good.
Definitely. So in the chat, so kind of switching gears here, is a question from Tori. What was y'all's thought process behind picking which incident types to include? Just skimming through the methodology, I see anti-LGBTQ legislation is excluded, but someone at a state bill hearing saying LGBTQ comments would be included. Why not include systemic incidents like legislation or universities taking down resource pages for LGBTQ students?
Yeah, that's a great comment. And I love that y'all are looking at the methodology because that's one of my favorite things to talk about. Um, it's really tricky, right, to turn qualitative data into these really concrete numbers. So one of the things that we decided very early on in doing the methodology was that we wanted the incidents to have a direct victim, to have like one specific person or group that you could point to and say, this is the person directly impacted by this, instead of kind of a broader, like, okay, all the students at this university or everybody in this state who may fall into this category are going to be impacted. So if we see something like at a state level hearing where let's say a trans person is giving public testimony and then they're being repeatedly misgendered by the state legislatures, or let's say that they experience harassment or protests when they were walking into the courtroom, that would be something where we would include it. With the issues around taking down web page content, it can get really tricky with that content as well, because in some cases, depending on state and federal laws, that stuff is being mandated by other government entities outside of the university. And so in those cases, it's really hard to determine if like that was being taken down specifically because of their own anti-LGBTQ bias, or if they were complying with other kinds of regulations. So in order to kind of address all of these issues, we really tried to kind of narrow the focus and make sure that all instances included are very clear-cut examples of hate and harassment. But I hope that answers your question. I am happy to talk a little bit more too if we want.
Definitely. From that, it's more of that micro view, not the macro view, and like that instant, those people, the exact thing instead of that systemic thing, which, the amount of data that we would get just from that macro view, from that systemic view, is huge as well.
And yes, thank you, Lawrence. And I just wanted to add too, there are a couple other amazing groups that do their own tracking of things like anti-LGBTQ legislation. ACLU has a great map. And then there's also a group called MAP. It's the Movement Advancement Project. They have amazing tracker that also looks at anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ legislation. So there are other resources that will specifically count those as their own kinds of incident data too.
Fantastic. So our next one is, I think open question for anyone who might have anything here. What's your advice for someone starting out and doing data analytics or science related to the community? So related to the LGBTQ plus community. If anyone has any advice there?
Yeah, I mean, I can go first. I think, finding spaces like this are a really amazing first start. People who are also interested in these same topics, people who have similar identities or similar backgrounds and goals when it comes into the work. As we all mentioned, making sure you're centering the voices of LGBTQ people. If you're one of our amazing allies who are helping on this work, making sure that you are talking to the people whose experiences you're trying to capture, and making sure that their voices are the ones that are being centered in the data, I think is one of the primary, things that we should consider when we're doing LGBTQ data. I don't know if anyone else has more specific thoughts.
Sorry, I was just gonna reemphasize what Kevin and Ken were saying earlier about make sure whether you identify as a member of the community or not, or you're working with data about the community as an ally or an outsider. Just remember again that it's people. Don't get too attached if you're in the community and get overly emotional and let that influence your analysis. The way you take the data in, but also if from the outside, remember you are talking about people's lives. And as we've said, sometimes this data has a tendency to be very heavy and sometimes very dark. So just, watch how that impacts you as well. And make sure that you're remembering that it's human beings, you're a human being, there's an emotional response, but if you're truly trying to be analytical, make sure you're kind of checking yourself and have other people look at your analysis with you to make sure you haven't gotten to emotionally connect it to the analysis that you're doing.
Definitely. I think in that is that if there are things, if you don't have the context for something and data that you're looking for, look to someone to provide the help that might have that guidance, who might be part of that context, whether so, especially if it's someone even within our own community doing. For myself as a cis gay man, if I'm working on data around trans or trans people of color or those queer identities, I don't have the full story. I don't truly know what, from their view, something might mean. So working with them and getting that understanding and that view of their data as well, or those type of situations, is huge as well. In that, and just thinking on that, and not, and knowing that your individual lens might not be the only one when it comes to looking at that data. Fantastic. Now, question is, what type of incidents are included in the NA categories?
Yeah, good question. So that's for looking into target type specifically to do kind of trend analysis on the data. So we only publicly display data that is, so we display all incidents, but we'll track in terms of specific targeting against drag performers, against healthcare providers, against educators, and against trans people. And so when we have those specific target types, there are a lot of incidents that fall outside of those targets as well. So that could be anything from like graffitiing your local LGBTQ center. It could be, somebody being yelled homophobic slurs when walking with their partner down the street. It could be generic protest, against something else, like a protest against a pride festival. All of these kinds of things that don't fall into one of those specific trend buckets, but are still counted under our broader expression of hate.
Fantastic. Awesome. So don't know if there's any more questions or, there, but I think with that, I want to thank Sarah, Heidi, Kevin, Ken, for coming on and talking about this, and the work that is being done with this tracker and the review of the data, and really showing it and giving it kind of that voice and allowing people to see in their areas to even make action. So huge, and the work, Sarah, Heidi, that you do with GLAAD and just GLAAD as a whole is huge. And thank you for taking the time today for all of that and to talk about that.
Thank you all so much for having us. Really appreciate it. It's always fun to get to talk about data stuff on the back end. If you guys have any questions, I'll drop our generic press inbox in the chat. Feel free to reach out there. They can get it to me, Heidi, anyone else that might need to touch on it. So really appreciate it, and thanks for all you guys do.
Yes, thank you. And yes. And with that, so we've got just a few closings. So let me share my screen again. We're going to start now for those who are in. Let me share this again. Swag giveaway time. So for those of you who have been here, who have stayed here, we are going to be giving away some swag, some Tableau gift cards. Kyle will be taking it away. Kyle, if you want to go through.
Yes, thank you, sir. I'm having trouble with this microphone today. Thank you. And I also want to reiterate big, huge thank you to Heidi, Sarah, Kevin, and Ken. This event, like I said, we've been looking forward to this for months. It's just been great having you guys. So I have somewhat randomly, based on attendance and participation here, chosen 4 people to receive $50 Tableau swag gift cards for the online shop. So if you hear your name, please drop your email address in the chat so that we can coordinate with you offline and get your gift card over to you. So drum roll, please. First person is Tori Paxton, followed by Maria Elisa Londono, Galen Smith, and Amari McGee. So if the 4 of you could drop your email addresses in the chat, otherwise we'll try to chase you down if you can't. And thanks again for joining, and thanks again for participating.
Yes, and if you want, you can not, if you don't want to put it in the general chat, you can right click on Kyle's name or Sarah's name and do a DM to send it over. But I do see those as well. So thank you all, and congratulations. Love giving away Spillum.
Awesome.
And
Thanks, Lawrence.
so, of course. So in closing, again, thank you for everyone who came here, and big thank you to Sarah and Heidi from GLAAD, Kevin and Ken, the Flerlage twins, who never truly need an introduction, I feel. But this, as Kyle just said, has been something that we have been excited about and really, looking forward to for months because of seeing the partnership with huge individuals in our community and the DataFam community as a whole, with the partnership with a huge LGBTQ plus group such as GLAAD, and the work that is being done here. It has been one of those just like things that just sits, and it's like, this is one of the best things for us as a community, for the LGBTQ plus community. It's heavy work, but seeing such a collaboration in with data and its impact is huge. And so thank you, Sarah, Heidi, Kevin, Ken, taking the time and being more than willing and amazing partners throughout this whole adventure in coming to today and for this Pride Month event. So coming up next, sign up for our bevy page for our upcoming August event. Next, we are now officially at 4 years for the DataPride Tableau User Group. So we'll be doing our 4-year anniversary a little late this year, but we're so excited to be doing that in August, as well as if you're in the Tableau community Slack, if you want to join the Tableau community Slack, please, we are there. Community-data-pride is our channel, and we cannot wait to connect with you there. And with that, one final thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up, sharing this, and a great conversation overall. We want to wish you all a fantastic rest of your Pride Month and year, and we hope to see you all again soon. With that,
Yeah, and Lawrence, I just
yes.
want to add one more plug for everybody. Pride Month is not over. We still have another weekend. Make sure that you go out and support your local queer artists, drag queens, drag bars, gay bars, lesbian bars, all of your LGBTQIA plus spaces. This is their money-making time of year. Speak with your money during this time of year, and make sure that you give them one more really strong weekend, because oftentimes Pride Month will make or break small gay and queer owned businesses. So go out and support your local establishments and your local artists and entertainers. They really need it.
100%, and thank you for that plug, Kyle. And so I hope, and remember also, we're here all year long. Pride is all year long. So we might focus on a month, but we all here all year long. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.